Okay, guys, you have been working hard on your zines, and now it is time to craft them and finish them up. So, the best way to do this is to use the rubric from the assignment. So, this is the final zine project assignment, and at the bottom there's a rubric, and you can kind of use this to make sure you've hit all your marks. So, let's go through my Lustig zine as an example through these check marks. So the first thing we have to do is have chapter titles, at least 3 of them, that are well styled. So here are my chapter titles, here, here, and here. And you can see that I didn't choose to use the typeface on the cover. And that's because I found that when I put that as smaller type, it was difficult to read. So I stayed with a version of the body copy as my headers, but I tried to style them in kind of a clean way like he did on this book. It's also important that all your subheads are the same, so make sure that you have a style sheet called subheads and all of those are exactly the same size. We want the readability of these to be good and to stand out from the body copy, so make sure that it's sizable. I've got mine at 15 point and my body copy is at 10 point. So 5 points larger, all caps, and heavier weight. So you want that to stand out from the body copy. You're supposed to have 200 words per spread on this. So if you want to check that, the easiest way to check your word count is to highlight the text. So just highlight the text from one spread and then go to Window, Info, and that will give you the copy characters, words, lines, paragraphs. So this has 205 words, which is fine. So anything more than 200 words per spread, and you are good to go on the word count. We also want that body copy to be easy to read. So some of the things you can do to help with that is the proper body copy size. So body copy should be between 10 and 12 point. This body copy is 10. I can go a little smaller than the 12 point because it's a really easy typeface to read, and I'm not going to have any trouble with heavy type or serifs getting in the way. You can go smaller if you have a typeface that runs a little wide. You can go larger up to 14 point if you have a typeface that is real narrow. So there's certainly room in there to adjust for visibly having it at about 10 to 12 point. The other thing that you need to dial in for readability is the leading. Now the leading number that I recommend for you is 120 to 140%. So if I've got my copy at 10 point, then 14 point is 140% of 10. It's 10 over 14 is that. If I go to 13, it's 130%, and at 12, it's 120%. And the reason why I went to 14 was because I had space for it. So if you have space for leading, certainly go closer to the 140%. The other thing that interferes with readability is too short or too long of a line width. So let me show you how you can check that. I'm going to highlight this text, and again, I'm going to use that info to show me how many characters are in this line. So this one has 65 characters. Ideally, you want your line width between 50 and 75 characters. So you'll notice in books, always about 50 to 75 characters. So this one is 65, no problem there. This one's more narrow, and it might be pushing it. 49 characters. So that's actually fine. I'm only one short of the 50 minimum. But try to find yourself between 50 and 75 characters. The next thing we want to do is make sure the overall design style works well with the content. So you can see on mine, what I've tried to do with that is use some pieces of his design. So this circle, and it ties in with kind of the circle in this eye and vision, and then these lines I picked up from the side of this piece. And then I'll show you a couple student examples where they've done a good job. This one is a April Greiman zine, and you can see the colors and textures kind of go throughout. And this one is on Alexei Brodovich, who's the European art director. You can see the type on there kind of resembles the type from Harper's Bazaar. You see the R in there. And everything's kind of organized almost in a way like a magazine would be. very simple and clean. Lots of good images and photography. We also want to make sure that the front cover is well designed. And the reason is when somebody sees this, they want to both be curious about what this zine is about, what they're about to see, but also understand quickly who it is and what the angle is. So Alvin Lustig, for example, he went blind at 40. So this book could have been about losing his sight. It could have been about his book covers, but it's not. It's generally about his design genius. So that's why you need that kind of subhead to tell us, because otherwise there's lots of different angles you could take with this artist. We want to know what this is about, who it's about, and we want to be drawn into it and kind of get a little bit of a flavor for this artist by the style of the cover. The other thing we want to watch for is those hyphenations. We want the minimal hyphenations and widows. So you can adjust for those in your body copy mostly. So this body copy I have, let's open it up. You can see that I have my copy is justified. So if you justify your copy, try to put settings in that will allow for a little more flexibility of word spacing. Otherwise, you're going to have those rivers of space. And partly why you might have too many hyphenations and widows is also that line width that I told you about. If you're below 50 characters a line, you're going to see some hyphenations because there's not enough room to put all those words, especially if the copy has large words. So make sure that your line width is correct. So that means you could either make the copy a little bit smaller. So if it's 11, go to 10. If it's 12, go to 11. And that will help. The other thing you want to put your settings on is hyphenation. So this is how I have it, so that there is a limit of 2 hyphens per paragraph. So make sure before you hand this in that you read through and make sure you have no more than 2 hyphens per. Another thing I'm looking for is I want your images to be reflected in the body copy. So if I'm talking in this case about book covers, it needs to talk about those book covers in the copy and mention them. You don't have to show every piece of work that you talk about, but you do have to talk about the work that you're showing. So if you're talking about their designs with magazine, you got to show some of those. If you're talking about how they use color or type, you got to show something that is proof of that. And again, make sure you don't show any work that has their name in it, because that's probably not their work. That's a tribute to them. Another thing that I'm looking for is I want your page numbers on here. You can see mine are down here at the bottom. Not only do I want them set up, but I want them spaced well. So if you look, I moved one of these at some point. This one on page 6 I moved because it was kind of close to the copy. So if your page numbers are too close, and I've got to unlock this layer. That's the other thing you want to do, is make sure your parent page is the topmost layer. I usually make a layer just for whatever's on the parent page. That way it shows above anything in the document. But if you wanted to move your pages, if they were too close to the edge, you just go to the parent page, grab them, move them, and then when you return to your document, they will be moved. Okay, you can also make them smaller, you can make them in color, you can make them bold, but generally what you want to watch for is make sure they're set up in the master pages, make sure they're not too close to the copy, so we don't want to see the copy like this right next to it. Okay, so make sure there's some space. And then also, by having it on a top layer, there should never be, I always lock that page too because it's easy to accidentally put something on there. So also, by putting the parent page on the top layer, if you ever have a color, let's say, that you wanted to put on a page, it would always go behind the page number because the page numbers are set up on the topmost layer. I also have the wow factor on the rubric. The wow factor is where I give you points for taking the time to put in details that really work, and for making the copy read well, and just kind of for hitting all these marks with just a little bit extra. And then, of course, 8 pages. You got to make sure that your layout is 8 pages, which you all, I'm sure, have done. You can see it in the Pages panel, number 8, so that's the easy one. Okay, so if you use that as a checklist and you go through it, just make sure that everything's in line with that. You should get a perfect score.